Let's make an outdoor speakeasy style gate. Aren't all gates inherently outdoors? Who am I even talking to? At the risk of sounding like a broken record at the start of my videos, a quality project begins with surface and squared stock. I still don't have a joiner, don't at me about it, so I use the track saw to give me a 90-degree edge as an alternative, and then my thickness planer and table saw to get me to the final dimension. For this video, I'm really focusing on one of 3 gates for this commission, and the primary source material is Western Red Cedar 2x8s with a 2x4 as a breadboard and at the base to keep everything flat. I'll shuffle everything around to find the most appealing grain direction before numbering the boards and then marking them to get dominoes to join them together. With the domino mortises, I go with the tight setting on one side of a seam and loose on the other to ensure that I've got a bit of flexibility in the glue up, which ultimately takes the stress out of the process almost entirely. Then to get that more rustic feel with a visual break or a V-groove between the boards, a 45-degree chamfer will go on all the corners. And since this is an outdoor project, I'm going to use epoxy for the majority of the quote-unquote glue applications. This product is called Crackzilla from Moss Epoxies, which they sent out to me a while back. I was jonesing to find a good use for it, and this was a great option. I like the fact that it has a self-mixing syringe, and you can use it in a caulk gun. If you don't use it all in one go, it stores nicely as well. Also, I appear to have missed the shot, but on top of using it to set the dominoes, I also used it along the entire seam between the boards to ensure a very tight glue up. Now, if you're liking this video so far, please go ahead and do the LCS, like, comment, and subscribe. Also, for more of my daily content, follow along on Instagram, which is my social media of choice. Don't listen to those other woodworking YouTubers when they say no pressure, just hit the button already. Now, as I said earlier, I'm going with a breadboard end at the bottom of the gate, and in a bit of a break from tradition, I'm going to epoxy in some loose tenons in from one side, and this is just a 1/2-inch thick cutoff I had from something. Might have made a grill scraper from it, I honestly can't remember. I'm going to mount the loose tenons at each of the seams, since the V-groove at the seam actually creates a bit of a weak spot when we're referencing the overall lateral strength of the gate. You might notice here that I have the camera pointed at the wrong hole. It's certainly not the first time that's happened in my life, but essentially I'm using the brad point of the drill bit to mark the center of the hole, and then I'll use the punch just a touch toward the shoulder to create the drawbore and bring the breadboard tighter to the body of the door. Now, I can't exactly say that I'm the first person to ever chuck up some dowel stock in a drill and use it with a dowel plate to make dowels. but let's just suspend disbelief for a minute and go with that. This creates a super smooth finish on the dowel itself since it's a sheared surface, but I will caution that with harder woods you can end up heating up your dowel plate a fair bit and risk messing with your temper. With the first drawboard loose tenon almost 8 inches from the edge on either side, you're going to need a spline on the edge to keep the breadboard in line. So the domino and a loose tenon to act as a spline will keep everything flat. Just be sure to only glue it in on one side to allow for inevitable wood movement. And here I'm just marking for center to figure out the mounting point for the router circle jig. Marking for center is a pretty simple concept, but when you have a lot of real estate to cover, picking an equal length spot on both edges and drawing from those to the opposing corner will create an X, and that will give you a more accurate center than trying to pin down a measurement with a tape measure. A hallmark for a speakeasy style gate or door is a look-through port, essentially a giant peephole so you can see folks on the other side. This particular gate doesn't have a door inside the port. The nearly identical one that I didn't film does. The processes between the two are extremely similar. I use a plunge cut with a track saw, which can be a bit awkward because of the riving knife, but a jigsaw and a fair bit of cleanup work would also be effective. If you're going to have the door in the port, you'll want to do your best to save the cutout piece so you can clean it up and ultimately use it. I couldn't in good conscience do the port without trimming it out, so I decided to take the opportunity to experiment with some cove cutting on the table saw to make some trim. I'm not going to go into crazy detail here, but I will say it's phenomenally less sketchy than you think it is. If you're going to be making trim and need fairly identical pieces, it's helpful to do identical passes on all your stock. I wanted to do one profile on one side of the door and another on the other, so I'm ultimately cutting these coves and then we'll snip off a bit to create two different profiles. Therefore, what would potentially be waste is just another profile of trim. Now, I've got a bit of a problem here. So, this door was built to 53 inches, and that was supposed to correspond with the posts that were at the actual job site. Now, the posts turned out to actually be a little bit thicker than expected, and that has caused the opening to be fairly smaller than originally expected as well. So what's going to end up happening here is I'm going to have to take 1 3/8 inch off of either side of the door to be able to get it to fit into the space and also have a appealing reveal of sorts. Now, the issue that's going to create is it's going to sort of take off this nice rounded transition. While this is not exactly ideal, I will be able to salvage the majority of this arc and hopefully butter in this transition using the router to blend in the round over, and I'll also have to respline the breadboard end. Hold on to your butts! These gates were done for a local design influencer, Gailey, who wanted to be a part of the install. It's probably the first time I've ever been able to put the client to work, and among her talents, she was great at helping with attention to detail, such as painting over all the screw heads, and really paying attention to aesthetics like hinge placement. I honestly can't thank her enough for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to a few more projects coming up with her in the near future. Stay tuned. And that's a wrap on this one. I'm really thrilled with how this project turned out, and more importantly, Gailey, the client, is just as excited, if not more so, than I am. As I said before, this was a 3-gate project, and this video really only focused on the one. There was also what I dubbed the baby gate, which was a dog gate that created a puppy airlock of sorts between the front gate and the backyard. And the front gate itself had a speakeasy port with a door, as well as a keypad entry. If you're interested in this hardware, go ahead and check out Van Dyke's Restorers. I'll have a link to them in the bio. They're not a sponsor, but all the hardware was sourced from them. As always, thanks for watching, and see you next time here at Cowdog Craftworks.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. As soon as I let go, I was like, that is not good. That is not a good throw. Oh my god. That got my ears. Okay. It's getting worse.